My name is Dean, a 33-year-old software engineer from Boston. What started as our routine monthly family dinner turned into a catastrophic revelation that changed everything. Despite my successful career, my relationship with my family has always been strained. For years, I secretly served as their financial backbone while being treated like the invisible middle child. When my sister blindsided me with that accusation in front of everyone, something inside me finally snapped. Before I dive into how my family dinner turned into financial chaos, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened next. Growing up as the middle child in our family of 5 was never easy. My parents, Robert and Linda, always seemed to have their attention pulled in directions away from me. My older sister, Amanda, 3 years my senior, held the coveted position of golden child from the moment she was born. My younger brother, Ryan, came 5 years after me, instantly becoming the baby of the family who could do no wrong despite his constant troubles. Our childhood home in suburban Massachusetts wasn't exactly filled with financial stability. Dad worked as a sales manager at a local furniture store, and Mom picked up part-time administrative jobs between raising us kids. They struggled to make ends meet, with frequent arguments about bills happening behind closed doors that weren't quite thick enough to muffle their voices. Amanda received the lion's share of parental attention and resources: dance lessons, private tutoring when she struggled with math, and even a car for her 16th birthday that they definitely couldn't afford. She grew accustomed to getting what she wanted through a combination of charm, manipulation, and tantrums when necessary. My parents nurtured this entitlement, constantly praising her mediocre achievements while overlooking her selfish behavior. Ryan took a different approach to family dynamics. By the time he reached middle school, he had perfected the art of rebellion. Skipping classes, minor brushes with the law for vandalism, and a rotating cast of questionable friends kept my parents in a constant state of worry. Their concern translated to attention, which seemed to be exactly what Ryan wanted. Each new crisis meant emergency family meetings, therapist appointments, and exceptions made to rules that I was expected to follow without question. Meanwhile, I became the responsible one by default. When I was 12, I started mowing lawns in the neighborhood to have my own money. By 15, I was working weekends at the local grocery store. I watched as my hard-earned cash sometimes mysteriously disappeared from my dresser drawer, only to find my mother had borrowed it for some family emergency. Dean is so self-sufficient, my mother would tell relatives with pride in her voice, as though my independence was a personality trait rather than a necessity born from neglect. School became my refuge and future escape plan. I poured myself into academics, earning scholarships that my parents took credit for through their excellent parenting. Working 30 hours weekly while maintaining a 4.0 GPA wasn't easy, but I understood early that no one would build my future except me. I graduated with a computer science degree from Boston University and landed a job at a tech startup. The day I moved into my own apartment was the first time I felt I could breathe freely. The physical distance helped maintain sanity, but old family patterns remained. The calls began within 3 months of my new job. Dad needed help with a medical bill. Mom's car required emergency repairs. Amanda was short on rent for her luxury apartment. Ryan needed bail money. I sent what I could, telling myself it was temporary while they got back on their feet. 4 years ago, when I was 29, the biggest request came. My parents were 3 months behind on their mortgage, facing foreclosure on the family home. The bank was threatening to take the house within 30 days. They needed $24,000 to catch up on payments and fees. I had just received a substantial bonus at work after our company was acquired. Rather than investing it as planned, I cleared my parents' debt. But I noticed something troubling. Despite their financial crisis, my mother was wearing new jewelry, and my father had recently purchased a fishing boat. Something didn't add up. "We're just terrible with money, Dean," my father said with a self-deprecating laugh that absolved him of responsibility. "You got all the financial smarts in the family. Instead of just paying off their debt, I made a decision that seemed sensible at the time. I would take over their mortgage payments directly, sending $8,000 monthly to the bank. The agreement was clear. This arrangement would remain between us until they could regain financial stability. They agreed to work with a financial advisor I would pay for and develop better money management skills. They never saw the financial advisor. Their spending habits remained unchanged. And mysteriously, they suddenly could afford to help Amanda with the down payment on her condo and take luxury vacations to Florida twice yearly. Meanwhile, I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment, drove a 7-year-old car, and focused on advancing my career. Last month, my hard work paid off with a promotion to Director of Engineering. The new position came with more responsibility and less availability for family matters. My parents' response to my promotion was telling. Instead of congratulations, my mother asked, "Does this mean you'll be too busy to help us renovate the kitchen? We're thinking of granite countertops." The monthly family dinners became increasingly difficult to attend. Each one featured some new purchase they had made, Amanda's latest shopping spree, or indirect comments about my absence from family functions due to work commitments. Yet no one seemed to notice or care that I was single-handedly keeping the roof over their heads. As the fateful dinner approached, I had been contemplating having a serious conversation with my parents about their financial dependence. I never expected Amanda would force the issue in the most public and humiliating way possible. The text message from my mother arrived 3 days before our monthly family dinner. "Don't forget, dinner at 6 on Sunday. Amanda has exciting news to share." I sighed, already feeling the familiar knot of tension forming in my stomach. These dinners had become elaborate performances where we all pretended to be a functional, loving family. I considered making an excuse, but knew it would only result in a barrage of guilt-inducing messages. Sunday afternoon arrived too quickly. I stopped at an upscale bakery to pick up an expensive cheesecake that would likely receive nothing more than a cursory thank you. This had become our routine. I brought high-end desserts that cost $50 or more, while my contributions to the family remained unacknowledged. Driving to my childhood home in the suburbs took 40 minutes from my apartment in the city. Each mile added to my anxiety. I rehearsed neutral topics of conversation and prepared responses to inevitable questions about my love life and work hours. I pulled into the driveway behind a brand-new white Mercedes SUV that I immediately recognized as Amanda's latest acquisition. Next to it sat my father's fishing boat and my mother's 2-year-old sedan. The contrast with my practical 7-year-old Toyota was stark. "Dean, you finally made it." My mother greeted me at the door with a quick hug that felt more obligatory than affectionate. Her wrist jangled with a new charm bracelet I hadn't seen before. "Traffic was heavy," I explained, though I had actually been exactly on time. Being accused of lateness was just part of the routine. The house looked different. The living room furniture had been replaced since my last visit a month ago. An enormous sectional sofa in butter-soft leather dominated the space, and a new 70-inch smart television hung on the wall. These were not the purchases of people struggling financially. "Do you like our new additions?" my father asked, emerging from the kitchen with a beer in hand. "Your mother deserves nice things after all these years." He offered me a brief handshake instead of a hug. "It looks great," I replied neutrally, handing him the bakery box. I brought dessert. "Oh, another cheesecake," my mother said with mild disappointment, as though I'd brought something ordinary rather than a gourmet creation that cost more than most people spend on an entire meal. Amanda brought homemade cookies. She's become quite the baker. Speaking of Amanda, she emerged from the kitchen looking like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. Designer jeans, a silk blouse, and jewelry that caught the light with every movement. "Little brother," she exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm, air-kissing near my cheeks. "So glad you could fit us into your busy schedule." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied automatically. "Is Ryan coming?" My mother's expression tightened. "He called at the last minute. Apparently his girlfriend surprised him with concert tickets. You know how Ryan is." I nodded, unsurprised. Ryan's absences were frequent and forgiven, while mine were treated as personal affronts to the family. "Come see what Amanda brought us," my father said, leading me to a display cabinet where a pair of crystal decanters now Saturday. "Aren't they beautiful? She knows exactly what we like. They're very nice, I acknowledged, wondering how much they had cost, and if Amanda had purchased them with her own money, or if my mortgage payments were indirectly funding these gifts. Dean, help me in the kitchen, my mother commanded rather than asked. Once we were alone, the interrogation began. How's work? Are you still working those terrible hours? It's not healthy, you know. The new position is demanding but rewarding, I answered carefully. The team depends on me. She sighed dramatically. We hardly see you anymore. You missed your father's birthday celebration last month. I was in Seattle for a critical product launch, I reminded her. I sent a gift and called. It's not the same as being there, she sniffed, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. Amanda rearranged her entire schedule to be here. She's such a devoted daughter. I bit my tongue, refraining from pointing out that Amanda's job as a part-time yoga instructor likely offered more flexibility than my role leading a team of 40 engineers. Dinner was served with the usual fanfare. My mother's pot roast, mashed potatoes, and vegetables arranged perfectly on their new china plates. Another recent purchase, I noted. Before we eat, Amanda announced, holding up her wine glass. I have exciting news. She paused for dramatic effect. I put a deposit down on a vacation property in Cape Cod. It's a charming little cottage near the beach. You'll all have to come stay once it's furnished. My parents erupted in applause and congratulations. My father raised his glass. To Amanda, always achieving her dreams and bringing joy to this family. I forced a smile and joined the toast, wondering how a part-time yoga instructor could afford a second home in one of the most expensive beach areas in Massachusetts. Something didn't add up. And what about you, Dean? My mother asked as an afterthought. Anything new with you? My promotion became official last week, I said. I'm now directing the entire engineering division. That's nice, my father replied without enthusiasm. More hours at the office, I suppose? And just like that, my achievement was dismissed, while Amanda received another 10 minutes of questions and praise about her vacation home purchase. The pattern was so predictable, it would have been funny if it wasn't my life. As we ate, the conversation drifted toward household expenses. My father mentioned the rising cost of property taxes, and my mother lamented the price of groceries, all while sitting surrounded by their brand new furniture and renovations. We're thinking of redoing the bathrooms next, my mother mentioned casually. The master bath needs a complete overhaul with one of those walk-in showers. I focused on my food, calculating the cost of such a renovation and comparing it to the $8,000 I sent them monthly. The math didn't add up unless they were saving absolutely nothing from their own incomes. Dean, will you be at the family reunion next month? My mother asked, suddenly. Everyone was asking about you at the last one. I wasn't aware there was a reunion planned, I replied honestly. My mother's expression turned hurt. I told you about it months ago. Amanda has been helping me plan everything. She's even making personalized gift baskets for all the relatives. Sorry, I don't remember you mentioning it, I said, though I was certain she had never told me. That's because he's always working, Amanda interjected with feigned concern. Poor Dean, married to his job with no time for family. The table fell silent for a moment. I could feel the tension building, the familiar dynamics shifting into place. My father cleared his throat, about to say something, when Amanda placed her fork down deliberately. Actually, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, I've been meaning to talk to you about something, Dean. And that's when everything changed. Amanda's fingers tapped against her wine glass, a habit she'd had since childhood when preparing to say something particularly nasty. The soft clink of her manicured nails against crystal created an ominous rhythm in the suddenly quiet dining room. The family has been talking, she began, her voice taking on the condescending tone she reserved for when she felt particularly superior, about your commitment issues. Commitment issues? I repeated, genuinely confused. I placed my fork down and looked around the table. My father had become intensely interested in cutting his pot roast, while my mother busied herself rearranging the serving dishes. To this family, Amanda clarified with an exaggerated sigh. You're never around. You miss important events. You're always too busy with work. I have responsibilities. I defended myself. My job is demanding, but I make an effort to stay connected. My mother chose this moment to join the conversation. We were just saying the other day how we never see you anymore. Remember when you missed your cousin Tracy's wedding? And last Christmas, you only stayed for 3 hours before heading back to the city. I explained about Tracy's wedding. I was in Japan for a critical client meeting that had been scheduled months in advance. And at Christmas, I had to manage an emergency server outage. There's always some excuse, my father muttered, still not making eye contact. They're not excuses, I replied, feeling the familiar frustration rising. They're legitimate professional obligations. Well, Amanda continued, swirling her wine dramatically, some of us prioritize family over career advancement. The hypocrisy was staggering. Amanda, who had borrowed money from our parents for years without repayment. Amanda, who had moved back home twice after failed relationships, expecting to be taken care of. Amanda, who worked 20 hours a week and spent the rest of her time at boutique fitness studios and shopping malls. I think we have different definitions of family commitment, I said carefully. What's that supposed to mean? Amanda's eyes narrowed dangerously. Nothing, I backpedaled, not wanting to create a scene, just that we contribute in different ways. My attempt to diffuse the situation only seemed to ignite Amanda's determination. She straightened in her chair, placing both hands flat on the table. Contribute? She repeated, her voice rising slightly. That's interesting wording, Dean, because from where I'm sitting, you don't contribute much at all. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Amanda, maybe now isn't the time. No, Dad, she interrupted. We've all been thinking it. Someone needs to say it. She turned back to me, eyes glinting with triumph. When was the last time you helped Mom and Dad with anything? When was the last time you showed up for a family work day or helped with house projects? I live 40 minutes away and work 60-hour weeks, I reminded her. Excuses, she dismissed with a wave of her hand. I live 30 minutes in the opposite direction, and I still make it here every weekend to help. My mother nodded in agreement. Amanda redid the entire garden last spring, and she helped your father install the new ceiling fans. I bit my tongue to avoid pointing out that gardening and basic home improvements were hardly equivalent to the financial support I provided. The conversation was following a familiar script, until Amanda decided to escalate. You know what, Dean? I'm just going to say what Mom and Dad are too nice to tell you. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a theatrical near whisper. They're disappointed in you. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Despite everything, despite knowing how my family operated, the words still hurt. Is that true? I asked, looking directly at my parents. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother became fascinated with her napkin. They would never say it, but yes, Amanda continued, clearly enjoying her role. You've become so wrapped up in your fancy job and city apartment that you've forgotten where you came from. I haven't forgotten anything, I said quietly. Oh, really? Amanda's voice took on an edge. When was the last time you contributed anything meaningful to this family? Dad needed help with the property taxes this year. Where were you? Mom needed a new car last year. Who helped her figure out the financing? Me. It's always me picking up your slack. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. The property taxes she mentioned, paid with money I had provided. The car financing. Possible because I had been covering the mortgage, freeing up their income for other purchases. My silence seemed to embolden her. Amanda sat back, crossing her arms with a smug expression. Mom and Dad said you never contribute anything to this family, and they're right. To my astonishment, my father nodded slightly, and my mother had the audacity to add, We do wish you were more present, Dean. Amanda, seeing their reaction, turned to me with a triumphant smile. She actually began to slow clap, which my parents joined after a moment's hesitation. The sound of their applause filled the dining room, a surreal soundtrack to my growing anger. Well? Amanda prompted when I didn't immediately respond. Nothing to say for yourself? In that moment, something shifted inside me. 4 years of paying their mortgage while being treated as the family disappointment. 4 years of enabling their financial irresponsibility while receiving criticism for my work ethic. 4 years of silent resentment that had been building toward this very moment. I looked around the table at my family, at the new furniture, the expensive renovations, the luxury items that surrounded us, and made a decision that would change everything. I smiled. "Perfect," I said, maintaining my smile while reaching for my water glass. The single word hung in the air, surprising them with its calm delivery. They had expected defensiveness, perhaps even an argument. My composed demeanor clearly wasn't the reaction Amanda had anticipated. I took a deliberate sip of water, letting the tension build. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair while my mother's hands fidgeted with her napkin. Only Amanda maintained her triumphant expression, though confusion had begun to cloud her eyes. "Then the $8,000 I've been paying for their mortgage every month stops today." The reaction was immediate, and exactly as satisfying as I had imagined it might be during my darkest moments of resentment. My father, who had just taken a large gulp of wine to cover his discomfort, choked mid-swallow. Red liquid sloshed over the rim of his glass as he coughed violently. My mother's transformation was even more dramatic. The color drained from her face so rapidly that for a moment I worried she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no words emerged. Amanda's reaction completed the tableau of shock. Her smug smile froze, then crumbled as confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror crossed her face in rapid succession. "What are you talking about?" she finally managed. I placed my napkin on the table and leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely calm now that the secret was out. "For the past 4 years, I've been paying Mom and Dad's entire mortgage. $8,000 every month, sent directly to Coastal Savings Bank. That's $96,000 annually, or $384,000 over the past 4 years, if you're curious about the total." "That's ridiculous," Amanda sputtered. "They would have told me." "Would they?" I turned to my parents. "Mom? Dad? Care to confirm?" My mother had found her voice, though it emerged as barely more than a whisper. "Dean, we agreed that would stay between us." "Yes, we did," I acknowledged, "along with your promise to work with a financial advisor and develop better money management skills. Instead, you've been renovating the house, buying new cars, and apparently helping Amanda purchase vacation property." My father had recovered from his coughing fit, but couldn't meet my eyes. "Son, this isn't the time or place." "It seems like exactly the right time and place," I countered. "Amanda just announced to everyone that I don't contribute to this family, with your apparent blessing. I think the fact that I've been saving you from foreclosure for 4 years is relevant information." "Foreclosure?" Amanda repeated, her voice rising. "What foreclosure?" I turned to her. 4 years ago, Mom and Dad were 3 months behind on mortgage payments. The bank was about to take the house. They called me in tears, and I paid the $24,000 they needed to catch up. "We were going through a rough patch," my mother interjected defensively. "A rough patch caused by chronic financial mismanagement," I corrected. "Dad had bought a boat. You had joined that expensive country club. The credit cards were maxed out. Rather than just bailing you out, I agreed to take over the mortgage payments with the understanding that you would learn to live within your means." Amanda's shock was turning to anger. "I don't believe this. They would have told me if things were that bad." "Like they told you about the second mortgage they took out to pay for your wedding?" I asked. "Or the retirement account they emptied for your graduate school tuition that you never finished?" Her face flushed. "That's different. They're my parents. They wanted to help me. And they're my parents too," I replied evenly. "Except I've been helping them while being treated like I contribute nothing." My father finally found his courage, though it manifested as indignation. "Now wait just a minute, Dean. Yes, you've helped with the mortgage, and we're grateful, but that doesn't give you the right to throw it in our faces." "I never intended to throw it in your faces," I said. "I kept my promise to stay quiet about our arrangement. You're the ones who sat here and allowed Amanda to claim I give nothing to this family." You applauded her accusation. My mother's expression had morphed from shock to calculation. "Sweetheart, Amanda didn't understand the situation. We've appreciated everything you've done. You know that. Have you? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you've taken my financial support while criticizing my absence at family events, absences caused by the very job that allows me to pay your bills. This is just a misunderstanding, my mother continued, reaching across the table to pat my hand. I withdrew it before she could make contact. It's not a misunderstanding, I replied firmly. It's a pattern, one that ends today. What do you mean? My father's voice had an edge of panic now. Exactly what I said. The mortgage payments stop today. I'll be calling the bank tomorrow to remove my name from the automatic payments. You can't do that, my mother exclaimed. We don't have that kind of money. You have 2 incomes and no children at home, I pointed out. The house is half paid off. Sell the boat. Cancel the country club membership. Downsize if necessary. After everything we've done for you, my father began, his face reddening with anger. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Amanda, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, finally recovered her voice. I still don't understand why you kept this a secret from me. Because it wasn't your business, I replied simply. It was a private arrangement between me and our parents. But we're family, she protested. Family shouldn't have secrets. I laughed without humor. That's rich coming from you, Amanda. Did you tell Mom and Dad that your vacation property is actually an investment your boyfriend convinced you to make? Or that you've been borrowing money from Grandma Jean because you're already underwater on the down payment? Her face confirmed my suspicions, gathered from conversations with our grandmother who had called me concerned about Amanda's financial requests. How dare you? She whispered. No, how dare all of you? I replied, standing up from the table. I've sacrificed my own financial security to maintain yours. I've lived in a modest apartment, driven an old car, and postponed my own life goals to keep this family afloat. And my reward is being told I contribute nothing. My mother began to cry, her go-to strategy when confrontation wasn't going her way. Please, Dean, let's not make hasty decisions. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, I said, picking up my jacket from the back of the chair. I should have done this years ago. The mortgage payments stop today. What you do next is entirely up to you. As I walked toward the door, I heard my father's chair scrape back. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back, he shouted. The empty threat of a man who suddenly realized he was about to lose his financial safety net. I turned back one last time. I'll come back when you're ready to have an honest relationship that isn't based on what I can give you. Until then, I wish you luck with the mortgage. And with that, I walked out into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than I had in years. The drive home passed in a blur. Streets and traffic lights melded together as my mind replayed the dinner scene on repeat. By the time I parked in my apartment building's garage, my hands were shaking, not from fear or regret, but from the sheer emotional release of finally speaking my truth. My apartment felt different when I walked in. Quieter, more spacious somehow. I moved to the kitchen counter where my laptop sat and opened the folder marked Family Finances. 4 years of mortgage statements, transfer records, and a running total that made my stomach clench when I saw the final figure. $384,000. Enough for a substantial house down payment in most parts of the country. Enough to have fully funded my retirement accounts. Enough to have changed the trajectory of my own life, rather than subsidizing my family's poor choices. My phone began buzzing within 20 minutes of my departure from my parents' house. Amanda first, 3 consecutive calls that I sent to voicemail. Then text messages, each more dramatic than the last. How dare you embarrass me like that and storm out? You're lying about the mortgage. Parents would never keep that from me. Call me back right now. We're not finished discussing this. I silenced her thread and watched as my mother's name appeared next. Her voicemail was predictably tearful. Dean, honey, please call us back. Your father didn't mean what he said. We're just shocked and hurt by how you spoke to us. Family should support each other. Please call back so we can fix this misunderstanding. My father's approach was different. First anger, then threats, and finally negotiation. You made your mother cry. I hope you're satisfied with yourself. This childish behavior is exactly why we worry about your commitment to this family. Call us back immediately. We need to discuss this mortgage situation like adults. And finally, Dean, perhaps we were too harsh. Let's talk about a compromise. Maybe you could pay half the mortgage while we get our finances in order. I turned off my phone completely, poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, and sat by my window overlooking the city. The emotional whiplash was intense, guilt warring with righteous anger, relief battling with anxiety about what would happen to my parents without my financial support. Had I done the right thing? The question circled my mind as I sipped the amber liquid. Memories surfaced of countless moments when I'd been made to feel inadequate despite my success, invisible despite my contributions, selfish despite my sacrifice. I slept fitfully that night, waking to sunlight streaming through blinds I'd forgotten to close. The clarity of morning brought a strange sense of peace. For the first time in 4 years, my financial decisions were truly my own. Over coffee, I made 2 important calls. The first was to my financial advisor, explaining the situation and initiating the process to stop the automatic mortgage payments. Her response was telling. Dean, I've been hoping you'd make this decision for years. That arrangement was financially crippling your future. The second call was to the mortgage company, informing them that I would no longer be making payments on my parents' behalf. The representative asked if I wanted to send a final payment for the current month. No, I said after a moment's consideration. The arrangement ends immediately. I spent the rest of the morning documenting every payment I'd made, compiling statements and transfer records into a comprehensive file. Not for legal reasons. I had no intention of trying to recoup the money, but for clarity. No one would be able to minimize or deny my contributions again. Around noon, I turned my phone back on. 27 missed calls and 43 text messages, most from my mother and Amanda, but surprisingly, 3 calls from my brother Ryan. I listened to his voicemail first. Hey Dean, it's Ryan. Mom called me freaking out about something that happened at dinner. Said you're cutting them off financially? What the hell is going on? Call me back when you can. Sounds like you finally stood up to them. That last sentence caught me off guard. Ryan and I had never been close, largely because our roles in the family had been so different. Him the troublemaker, me the responsible one. But there was something in his tone that suggested understanding, perhaps even support. I called him back. Dean, finally, Ryan answered on the first ring. What the hell happened last night? I gave him the abbreviated version. 4 years of mortgage payments, Amanda's accusation, the family's applause, my decision to stop financial support. His low whistle came through the phone. Damn, brother. I had no idea you were bankrolling them all this time, though it explains a lot about their lifestyle upgrades. You're not surprised? I asked. That they took advantage of you? Not even a little bit. His voice carried years of similar, if different, experiences. They've been doing the same to me, just on a smaller scale. Guilt trips about money I supposedly owe them for bail that one time, legal fees from my teenage years. I've been sending them $500 a month for years. The revelation stunned me. Ryan, who worked as a mechanic and certainly didn't have money to spare, had also been manipulated into financial support. They told me you never help them, I admitted. He laughed bitterly. They told me the same about you. Divide and conquer, right? For the first time in our adult lives, Ryan and I had a real conversation. We compared notes on our parents' manipulation tactics, Amanda's role as both golden child and enforcer, and the emotional toll of being perpetually deemed inadequate. So what are you going to do now? Ryan asked. Hold my ground, I replied with more confidence than I felt. They need to figure out their own finances. Good for you, he said, and I could hear the genuine approval in his voice. Maybe I should do the same. Maybe you should, I agreed. We should get a beer sometime, Ryan suggested. Talk about something other than our dysfunctional family. I'd like that, I said, surprised to discover I meant it. After we hung up, I felt an unexpected connection to my brother that had never existed before. Perhaps something positive would emerge from this mess after all. The rest of the day brought increasingly desperate messages from my parents. By evening, my mother's tactics had escalated to health concerns. Your father isn't feeling well from the stress. His blood pressure is through the roof. Is that what you wanted? I didn't respond, recognizing the emotional manipulation for what it was. Amanda tried a different approach, her tone shifting from anger to reason. I've been talking to Mom and Dad about what you said. I still think you're exaggerating about how much you've helped them, but if there's some truth to it, we should all sit down and discuss a fair arrangement moving forward. I almost laughed at the sudden change. Amanda, realizing that her parents' financial well was drying up, was now positioning herself as the reasonable mediator. That night, I drafted an email to my parents with the complete financial records attached. My message was simple. I've attached documentation of all mortgage payments made over the past 4 years, totaling $384,000. I have no expectation of repayment. I simply want clarity about my contributions to this family. The automatic payments have been canceled effective immediately. I'm taking some time away from family gatherings to reassess our relationship. I hope you use this opportunity to create a sustainable financial plan that doesn't depend on my support. I hesitated before adding a final line. I do love you both, which is why I've supported you for so long. But love shouldn't require financial sacrifice without acknowledgement or appreciation. I clicked send, then blocked their numbers for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I needed rest and the space to process my newfound independence. The first week of financial independence passed with surprising calm. I threw myself into work, finding renewed energy and focus now that my mental bandwidth wasn't occupied by family financial stress. My team noticed the difference, with one colleague commenting that I seemed lighter somehow. I maintained the block on my parents' numbers, allowing myself the space to heal without their immediate pressure. Amanda, however, found creative ways to continue her campaign. First came the angry social media posts, vague enough to avoid naming me directly but specific enough that extended family members could read between the lines. Amazing how some people claim to care about family only when it gets them attention. The truth always comes out. Then came the flying monkeys, cousins and aunts suddenly reaching out with concerned messages, asking if everything was okay between me and my parents. Most took a neutral stance, expressing worry without taking sides. A few, however, had clearly heard only my parents' version of events. I can't believe you'd abandon your family like this, wrote my Aunt Patricia. After everything they've sacrificed for you. I didn't engage with most of these messages, but to Patricia, I sent a simple reply. I've sacrificed too. 4 years of mortgage payments worth. Ask them about that part of the story. She never responded. Ryan and I met for that promised beer the following weekend, establishing what felt like a genuine brother relationship for the first time. He shared more details about his own financial arrangements with our parents. They told me the $500 monthly was to repay them for my troubled youth, he explained, making air quotes around the phrase. The lawyer fees, the car I wrecked, therapy sessions, they said they kept a spreadsheet. Did they ever show you this spreadsheet? I asked. Ryan laughed. Of course not. And after what you've told me, I'm guessing it doesn't exist. Or if it does, the amounts have been heavily inflated, I added. Either way, I'm done, Ryan said firmly. Called Mom yesterday and told her the payments stop now. She cried. Dad yelled, but I held firm. I felt a surge of pride for my younger brother. How did that feel? Terrifying, he admitted with a grin. Then, amazing. 10 days after the fateful dinner, my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was returning from a morning run when I found her sitting in the lobby, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Dean, she said, standing quickly. We need to talk. I considered turning around and leaving, but decided it was time to face this directly. Come up then. In my apartment, she perched nervously on the edge of my couch, declining offers of coffee or water. She looked around with obvious curiosity. This was only her second visit in the 4 years I'd lived here. Your place is nice, she commented, Smaller than I expected for someone with your salary. That's because most of my disposable income has been going to your mortgage, I replied evenly. She flinched but didn't dispute the point. Dean, we need to discuss what happened. Your father and I were shocked by your outburst at dinner. It wasn't an outburst, Mom. It was the truth. We never meant to make you feel unappreciated, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Of course we value everything you've done for the family. Do you? Because allowing Amanda to publicly shame me for not contributing suggests otherwise. She sighed dramatically. Amanda speaks without thinking sometimes. She didn't understand the financial arrangement between us. Because you kept it from her, I pointed out. Just like you apparently kept Ryan's payments from me. Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of Ryan. You've been talking to your brother? Yes. Seems we've both been financing the family while being told the other contributes nothing. That's not true, she protested weakly. Isn't it? You told Ryan I never help financially. You sat silent while Amanda accused me of the same. We were just disappointed about your absence from family events, she attempted to redirect. The money was separate. No, it wasn't, I countered. You can't take someone's financial support while simultaneously criticizing them for the work commitments that make that support possible. She was quiet for a moment, perhaps genuinely considering my words for the first time. Then her expression hardened slightly. What about your father's blood pressure? The doctor says stress is making it worse. Are you trying to give him a heart attack? And there it was, the guilt tactic, right on schedule. Mom, I'm not responsible for Dad's health. His stress comes from financial mismanagement, not my decision to stop enabling it. Enabling, she repeated, offended. We're your parents, not some addiction you need to control. Financial dependence can absolutely be an addiction, I replied. And I've been the enabler, providing money without accountability. She stood abruptly. I can see this conversation is pointless. You've clearly made up your mind to abandon your family when we need you most. I remained seated, refusing to engage with the dramatics. I haven't abandoned anyone. I've simply stopped paying a mortgage that isn't mine. There's a difference. Your father was right about you, she said, gathering her purse. You've changed. Success has made you selfish. As she reached the door, I called after her. Mom, wait. She turned, a flicker of hope in her eyes that I might be reconsidering. How did you get here? To my apartment? I took a taxi, she replied, confused by the question. And how will you pay for the mortgage now? She had no answer for that. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt oddly final. That evening, my father called. I decided to answer, bracing myself for the anger that would surely come. Your mother came home crying. He began without preamble. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied neutrally. No, you're not, he snapped. You've made your position clear. But let me make something clear to you. This isn't just about money. This is about respect. I agree completely. My calm response seemed to throw him off balance. He'd been prepared for an argument. The bank called today, he continued after an awkward pause. They said the payment didn't come through. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? About as embarrassing as being told I contribute nothing to the family after 4 years of paying your mortgage, I suggested. He was quiet for a moment. We're in real trouble here, Dean. Without your help, we could lose the house. You have options, I said. Downsize to something more affordable. Sell some of those renovations and luxury items. Get a financial advisor like I suggested 4 years ago. At our age, he protested, we're too old to start over. You're in your early 60s with 2 incomes and no dependents, I reminded him. Many people your age live comfortably within their means. So that's it? You're really going to let your parents struggle? You're only struggling because you've been living beyond your means with my support, I pointed out. It's time to align your lifestyle with your actual income. The conversation ended with my father hanging up, but not before issuing one final threat. You'll regret this decision when you need family and find yourself alone. 3 days later, Amanda called. I almost didn't answer, but decided it was better to address her directly than allow her to continue her campaign of misinformation among extended family. Mom and Dad cut me off, she announced without greeting. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, echoing my response to our father. No, you're not, she snapped, unconsciously mimicking his words. This is your fault. They say they can't help me with the vacation property down payment now because they have to focus on their mortgage. That sounds like a responsible decision on their part. Her voice turned wheedling. Dean, you know I've already put the initial deposit down. I'll lose that money if I can't complete the purchase. Can you help me out? Just this once? The audacity was breathtaking. Let me understand this correctly, I said slowly. You accused me of contributing nothing to the family, and now you're asking me for money? That was a misunderstanding, she backpedaled. I didn't know about the mortgage situation, and yet you felt confident enough to make accusations and lead an actual applause against me. I made a mistake, she admitted grudgingly. But that's in the past. This is an emergency. No, Amanda. A vacation home is not an emergency. It's a luxury you apparently can't afford. Her tone changed instantly from pleading to vicious. You've always been jealous of me. This is your revenge, isn't it? Making the whole family suffer because you felt underappreciated. I'm not making anyone suffer. I'm simply stopping a financial arrangement that was unappreciated and enabling poor decisions. You'll regret this, she threatened before hanging up. It struck me then how similar my family members sounded in their responses. The same phrases, the same emotional manipulation tactics, the same inability to take responsibility for their own finances. The realization was both sad and liberating. 3 weeks after the dinner, Ryan called with news. There's been a family emergency meeting. Dad called me demanding I attend, but I told him I had to work. What was it about? I asked, though I could guess. The house, Ryan confirmed. They got a formal notice from the bank. Without your payment, they're already behind, and the bank isn't being patient given their history. Let me guess. They wanted to discuss how to convince me to resume payments? Partly, Ryan said. But there's more. Apparently, they tried to take out a home equity loan to cover expenses, and that's when they discovered they're underwater on the mortgage. The house isn't worth what they still owe, even after your 4 years of payments. I sighed, unsurprised but still disappointed. Years of refinancing to fund their lifestyle finally caught up with them. Amanda suggested they all confront you as a united front, Ryan continued. Mom wanted to use health concerns as leverage. Dad was more focused on family obligation arguments. And what did you tell them? That they were crazy if they thought that would work, Ryan replied. I told them they needed to accept reality and downsize. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect, he laughed. But here's the interesting part. After Amanda stormed out, Mom actually admitted they might have taken advantage of your generosity. Really? I was genuinely surprised. Don't get too excited. It was quickly followed by, but that's what family is for. Still, it's the closest thing to acknowledgement I've ever heard from her. It wasn't much, but it was something. A tiny crack in the wall of denial my parents had built around their financial behavior. Perhaps reality was finally beginning to sink in. 3 months passed since the dinner that changed everything. Spring had given way to summer, bringing with it a sense of renewal that felt appropriately symbolic. I sat on the small balcony of my apartment, morning coffee in hand, reflecting on the transformation these months had brought. The most immediate change was financial. Without the $8,000 monthly drain on my resources, I had paid off my remaining student loans, maxed out my retirement contributions, and begun saving for a down payment on my own home. My financial advisor had mapped out a plan that would allow me to purchase a comfortable condo within a year, but the more profound changes were internal. The weight of resentment I had carried for years had lightened. I slept better, laughed more easily, and found myself more present both at work and in my personal relationships. Friends commented on the difference, noting that I seemed more like myself, though they couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed. As for my family, the situation had evolved in ways both expected and surprising. My parents, faced with financial reality for perhaps the first time in decades, had made the difficult but necessary decision to sell their house. The underwater mortgage meant they wouldn't receive any equity, but at least they would be free of the crushing payments. They had downsized to a 2-bedroom apartment in a 55-plus community that actually better suited their needs. The maintenance was included in their rent, eliminating my father's constant complaints about yard work and home repairs. Their new place was small but comfortable, forcing them to pare down possessions and live more simply. Amanda had experienced perhaps the most dramatic adjustment. Without my parents' financial assistance, she had been unable to complete the purchase of her vacation property, losing her initial deposit in the process. This financial setback, combined with some poor investment choices made with her boyfriend, who subsequently broke up with her when money got tight, had forced her to take a second job teaching additional yoga classes and doing administrative work at the studio. The experience of actually supporting herself fully for the first time at 36 was clearly uncomfortable but necessary. Our relationship remained strained, with minimal contact aside from group text messages about practical family matters. Ryan, on the other hand, had become an unexpected ally and friend. Our bi-weekly beer nights had evolved into a genuine brotherly bond. He had followed my lead in establishing financial boundaries with our parents, using the money he saved to enroll in community college courses to earn his business degree. His goal was to open his own auto repair shop within 5 years, a dream he had abandoned years ago when family financial obligations became too overwhelming. My parents' initial anger and blame had gradually transformed into something more complex. There were still occasional guilt-trip text messages and references to how much easier their lives had been before, but these were interspersed with small acknowledgments of their own responsibility. The most significant breakthrough came in the form of an email from my father 6 weeks after they moved into their apartment. "Dean, I want to apologize for some things I said during our last few conversations. The stress of the housing situation got the better of me. While I still wish things could have been handled differently, I've come to realize that your mother and I made many poor financial choices over the years. Your support allowed us to avoid the consequences of those choices for a long time, perhaps too long. We're adjusting to our new circumstances and finding that simpler living has some benefits. Your mother sends her love." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement, and it certainly wasn't a thank you for 4 years of financial support, but coming from my proud father, it represented significant progress. 2 weeks ago, I had taken a tentative step toward rebuilding the relationship by inviting them to dinner at a modest restaurant near their new apartment. The conversation was sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but ultimately more honest than any we'd had in years. We carefully avoided financial topics, focusing instead on their adjustment to apartment living and my recent promotion at work. As we parted in the restaurant parking lot, my mother hugged me with uncharacteristic gentleness. "We do appreciate you, Dean," she said quietly. "We haven't always shown it well." "No," I agreed. "You haven't. We're trying to do better," she added. "It's not easy changing at our age." "I know," I said, and meant it. "But it's necessary." My father shook my hand, then awkwardly pulled me into a brief hug. "That was a good dinner. Maybe we could do it again sometime." "I'd like that," I replied, surprised to discover the statement was true. As I reflect now on my balcony, watching the city wake up around me, I realize that the financial freedom I've gained is only part of what makes me feel lighter these days. The greater freedom comes from breaking the cycle of enabling and resentment that had defined our family dynamic for decades. The mortgage payments had been a tangible symbol of a deeper problem, my willingness to sacrifice my own well-being for approval that never came. By ending those payments, I had done more than protect my financial future. I had declared that my worth wasn't dependent on what I could provide to others. The path forward with my family will likely never be entirely smooth. Old patterns have a way of reasserting themselves, and true change takes time and consistent effort from all parties. But for perhaps the first time, we're building relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence and obligation. Ryan and I have planned a fishing trip next month, something we never did as children because our father always took Amanda instead. My parents send text messages now that ask about my day rather than hint at financial needs. Amanda remains a work in progress, but even she has shown small signs of growth as she adapts to financial independence. The most valuable lesson from this experience isn't about money at all. It's about the courage to speak your truth, even when it disrupts comfortable patterns. It's about recognizing that true family support shouldn't come at the cost of your own well-being. And perhaps most importantly, it's about understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to stop enabling destructive patterns. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? What helped you find the courage to stand firm? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's often the first step toward healthier relationships for everyone involved. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to speak your own truth when necessary.